Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today, Ricky is going to demonstrate some stuff on the computer and with the HX Stomp. I hope you enjoy it. It certainly can't be as bad as last week's. Jeez.
Hello, Richard from budgetguitarist.com. So today we're going to talk about how to have two amps at the same time in your Stomp. It's actually not easy. For those of you who do not know, the HX Stomp has one processor in it, and the Line 6 Helix product has two processors. The Stomp is half as powerful, which means you can kind of have half the amount of blocks. You can have 6 blocks in the Stomp. And unfortunately, amps take up a lot of CPU cycles. So what are some of the compromises? What's the best way to have a 2-amp setup in the Stomp? We're going to look at that today. And we start with an example. In 2006, I released my second album called Never Completely. And there was a Strat on the cover, my yellow Made in Mexico Strat, because most of the album was what I would call 80s retro Strat rock. Never Completely was the title track. In the song Never Completely, I've got a Strat part in the verse that's like a little distorted, but not much. And then when the chorus comes in, I bring in a couple of Epiphone Les Pauls, like in stereo, to give it this bigger sound. I'm going to open up the original Logic session from recording that and show you my tracks and show you what it is. And then we're going to have a look at how I can try to simulate this in the HX Stomp with its ability to do 2 amps. Here I'm going to play a little bit of the verse, like right at the end of the verse going into the chorus, so that you can hear the Strats, and then you'll hear the big Epiphone Les Pauls come in. So here's a little bit before it.
Why do you do this? I won't believe a single thing you're gonna say right now, baby, right now. When you say it's okay, you'll stay.
Okay, so you get the idea. Now I'm going to solo the Strats, and then I'll solo the Les Pauls, and I'm going to play a little bit of the verse, and then you'll hear the Les Pauls come in. That's a Pod 2 is what I used to record that, and that was, back in 2006, that was considered pretty good. You listen to it now soloed and you're like, well, that doesn't really sound great, those tracks, but I would argue the song as a whole does still sound good. It's really the music, it's the song, it's not the sounds. Anyway, you can see my dilemma then, right? So what I have like basically double track Strat, and then all of a sudden I got Strat and Les Paul. So how am I going to try to simulate that with the HX Stomp? Okay, so by the way, I down-tuned the Strat when I recorded that song. This is down a half step, it's E flat. A little easier for me to sing because I'm basically a bass. So if I'm going to be singing up around like E's kind of hard for me to sing a lot. My highest note that I can hit is G, but it's not a comfortable G. I'm not a baritone. I'm a bass.
I'm a bass.
Let me prove it.
You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch.
Okay, I don't want to get flagged by YouTube copyright. Anyway. Okay, so here I've got, this is a clean sound for my clean sound on the top channel here. I've got a AC30 with the drive turned up, so it's just starting to break up a little bit, so it'd be like right then for the chorus, my Snapshot 2 I'm adding in the bottom amp, which is the Line 6 electric. So now what I've got here is I've got the clean is mono, and then the distorted amp, I'm using a pitch module to basically fake stereo. Here's what it sounds like. and then of course when you go back to the verse it'd be. So that's the concept. So let's talk through this a little bit. Starting here, I've got this set to split A-B, and I'm sending an equal amount of signal to both paths, right? So then in the top path, here's my font. This is AC30, right? And you can see what my settings are. And then I'm using an IR file. Interesting thing, IR files use less CPU than the cab emulators inside of the Stomp, and they sound better. So you're going to save processing power and it's going to sound better. And you can see that I'm using IRs in both of my paths here. That's the top path. Down in the lower path here, I've got, let's see, this is patch 17. So on my my Friedman IR set, and this one up here is patch 1 on my Friedman. So similar speaker, but different methods of recording. And then over here, I've got my pitch, which is set to, you can see I'm using the stereo version of pitch, and I've got it set to the pitch that's being shifted by 7 cents is panned to the right, and then the dry is panned to the left. So simple pitch in HX Stomp is basically for doing intervals, like you can do perfect fifths and octaves and stuff like that. But I've got it set to the same note, and I've just detuned it a little bit, right? And so what that does is it gives you like this nice stereo spread. So that when I play, the clean sound, the clean amp is right in the center, and then the stereo distorted sound is split up. Now, of course, the issue here is I'm playing a Strat with single coils, and there's nothing I can do to make it sound like a humbucker. I mean, short of replacing the pickups. That Epiphone Les Paul sound, you're not going to get that out of single coils. You're just not. So anyway, that's that. Let me change guitars really quick. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch over to my PRS SE, made in South Korea, custom 24. We're going to check out a couple of other dual amp things. So here I've got this is both pickups. So let's check out the path. Starting here, I've got a split, and I'm sending the signal. The upper path is going all the way to the left speaker. The bottom path is going all the way to the right speaker. So this amp is on the left speaker. This is on the right. So the amps, well, I've got the AC30 again up here. For the cabinet, I'm not using an IR file. I'm actually using a 1x12 Mesa Boogie. External Cali is Mesa Boogie. Then down here for this, I've got the Mesa Boogie Rhythm 2. So this is a clean Mesa Boogie going into Friedman IR file. Then I've got a stereo reverb here, the Glitz, with all the chorusing turned off. So what I've got here is basically two different clean amps that sound, well, they sound different. I want you to see something interesting here, though. So for this bottom amp, which I think I selected first, I've got my pick of the whole collection, right? But that's going to use up a bunch of the Mesa Boogie models use a bunch of CPU. Look over here for this amp, where I'm also using the more intensive Stomp cab. See how my selections are limited? This gives you a pretty good idea of the amps that take like way more processing power, like a lot of these Brit, the Brit Trem, Brit Plexi, these models are all pretty heavy. And then you can see the line 6 stuff down here is more CPU friendly. So this is something to consider. If you're going to use a heavy duty amp for one of your choices, and you're going to use the Stomp cabinets instead of an IR file, then you have to make some compromises. Okay, so going through the settings, here's my AC30. And here's the cab. This is the 1x12 Cali. Now here's the bottom path. This is my Cali 4 Rhythm 2. So Mesa Boogie. Here's my IR file, Friedman. Then up here again, here is the stereo glitz, which I like. It's a good sounding reverb. And there you go. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, so for this guy, I wanted 2 different distorted amps. I'm going to switch to just my humbucker pickup. For the top path, I've got like a modern, modern metal, right? I guess you could call it with an IR file. So this is like a super overdriven, this decade kind of sound. And then down in the bottom path, I've got the Brit Plexi. So this is more like a classic rock, AC/DC Back in Black kind of sound. And here's the IR file for that. And so together, they're very different sounding. I've got them panned left and right, and this is what it sounds like. And I've got, the line 6 amp here, I do have it kind of exaggerated for effect, but this is kind of a cool use. It sort of simulates, I play stereo in my live gig. And so it kind of simulates the sound of 2 different guitars pretty well. I'm pretty pleased with this one. Okay, but we're not done yet. Let's look at this guy here. Okay, so here's the trick for this. I've got the top path panned to the left, the bottom path panned to the right, but you might notice there's no amp down here. All I've got is a compressor and an EQ, because you can actually play straight through the HX Stomp. You don't actually have to have an amp. You can just stick pedals in there. As a matter of fact, that's what you would do if you were using the HX Stomp into a traditional amp. You would do something like this. But this is sort of like the equivalent of recording clean. So up here, I've got a US Deluxe. This is a Fender Deluxe Reverb, right? Not really set to overdrive, but maybe break up a little bit. Maybe just on the edge. Into an IR file, of course, Friedman, as always. Then down here, I've got the Deluxe compressor into a 10-band graphic. And I really like the 10-band graphic because it's very visual. So you can see I'm kind of giving the high end quite a bit of boost. So that's kind of a neat effect, and that's sort of similar to using 2 amps, right? Neat trick. So the next 2 tricks are not dual amp, but since I'm in here doing the video, I'm going to do it anyway. This is just a way to make your guitar sound bigger if you're playing through stereo rig. So what I have here is a Deluxe Reverb, Friedman IR file, and then I've got a chorus, stereo chorus, but I've got the speed turned all the way down. So all it's doing is just kind of separating the signal in stereo. You can hear a little bit of movement, but it doesn't really sound like a stereo chorus. It's just a cool way to spread it. And then after that, I've got the stereo double tank, which is like a cool reverb. And of course, the advantage of doing this is that I've got a couple of blocks left and I can do whatever I want. I got all kinds of CPU left. And then finally, last but not least, so the detuned is panned to the right and the dry is panned to the left, and now we have a big stereo sound. So anyway, that's kind of some thoughts about using 2 amps inside the HX Stomp. You really have to be careful with your CPU. The other thing I discovered is that some amps sound so similar that you can't really tell, even if you have them panned hard left and right. So you really want to play around with the amps If you choose amps that are less CPU intensive, then you have more options, basically. And that should about cover it for this walkthrough. So there you go. Thank you very much for watching. And if you enjoyed this, please consider subscribing and clicking the bell. But if you've seen this channel ever before, you know the deal. We always release new episodes every Friday at 5.
Take it for granted that I won't find out 100% you is what you're all about. I don't believe this. What are you doing? I won't believe a single thing that you tell me. You wanna come over and straighten this out. You're totally improv, but never in doubt. I don't believe you. Why do you do this? I won't believe a single thing you're gonna say right now, baby. Right now, you say it's okay, you'll stay, you're tearing down.